and welcome to this Feedinfo webcast on tackling sustainability challenges in ruminant production. I'm Ollie Theocaris, Head of Perspectives Content at Feedinfo, and I will be your moderator today. This webcast has been developed with our partners Kemin, and we thank them for their support. So first, I want to explain a bit about how this is going to work. We've pre-recorded this session, but our speakers are online right now to take questions in the Q&A chat box on the right-hand side of the screen. If you post a question in the questions tab, they'll be able to type your response. So please ask away throughout the webcast. We're also going to be releasing a number of polls throughout. So if you want to share your opinions and see what others in the industry are thinking, do participate in these. You can find them in the poll tab. So to begin, I would like to introduce our speakers. We have a ruminant academic, a leader from a feed producer, and an expert from an animal nutrition provider to share their opinions on how ruminant producers can change their strategies to become more sustainable while remaining cost effective. Our speakers are Phil Cardoso, Associate Professor of Animal Sciences at the University of Illinois, Jean-Francois Honoré, Managing Director for Iberia at De Hoos, and Diego Martinez del Olmo, Senior Ruminant Product Manager for Europe, the Middle East and North Africa at Kemin Animal Nutrition and Health. It is great to have you all here today. So we're actually going to focus in on two key topics today. Ruminant production is facing increasing pressure to become more environmentally friendly while also remaining economical. So we're going to talk about the best way to address these two often conflicting issues. Our first topic is how can we address ruminant sustainability, focusing particularly on environmental challenges and animal welfare? Is it possible to combine a healthier planet without losing animal productivity? The scrutiny that animal agriculture is facing in terms of its environmental footprint is increasing. Ruminants in particular are getting a lot of attention, particularly for greenhouse gas emissions and nitrogen pollution. So we as a value chain need to step up to address some of these issues by changing the way that we raise these animals. Another area to think about is animal welfare. Consumers are increasingly asking for better welfare standards for animals involved in producing their food, but with these requests come challenges. It can be quite expensive to transition to new models that don't ensure new models that ensure high animal welfare standards, and consumers don't always want to pay more for this. With this in mind, I want to introduce our first poll, which you're going to find in the poll tab. Which sustainability issues do you think are currently the biggest challenges that we need to address in ruminant production? Let us know your thoughts now. So these are pretty big challenges, and I'm interested to hear what our speakers make of these issues. I'm going to pass over to Jean-Francois. Working for such a large feed company as De Hoos is, can you start by giving us your thoughts on this subject?
First of all, I would like to thank you to invite us on this very interesting and inspiring topic. Really, it's fascinating, this topic, because as a starting point, I would like to say that animal productivity is one of the major axes to have a healthier planet. So when we talk about healthier planet, I would like to mention 4 points. The first one, the one that everyone knows for a long time already, which is the issue related to resources scarcity, such as water, grains, arable land, which we know that cannot be expanded anymore. The second one, more recent, extremely important, which is around the carbon footprint. Third, which is the antibiotic withdrawal. And last but not least, the well-being animal, which are the 4 topics I was thinking about when you were talking about healthier planet. Management of resources closely are linked with animal productivity. If you look back on the historical track where we are, the feed conversion index that we are using everywhere is reflecting this high priority. So we are engaged for a long time already in this path for any economical purposes, but as well for management of the resources as well. So we believe that in the next at least 20, 30 years, we have still a lot of room for improvement accordingly in that space. About gas emission, obviously is under high priority right now with a lot of technical improvement about to be implemented or already implemented. Probably we will have some example on the technical side later on. The withdrawal of antibiotic enhanced best practices in farm management and also the well-being animal in certain way. So both are well, I will say, synergic between them two, and quite advanced as well, depend of the region where we are talking about. So our purpose is really to improve resources management, enabling our sector to improve sustainability in our food chain. Before going a little bit deeper on additional dimension, geography, not the same challenge everywhere. Africa and Asia are jointly representing where growth population will take place in the next 30 years, and where resources are missing compared to that growth. On the other side, taking the example where I am, Europe, well advanced on is potentially representing one of the best locations for a sustainable food chain, even though a lot to do everywhere, but through different topics and challenges to pursue. So nutrition has a large opportunity there. And I will not invade the technical space too much and let my colleague from the panel to expose some of the technical insight contributing in that direction. I would like to offer two challenges we are working on from our side, which is related to capabilities. The first one is on our side as a nutritional provider. The question for us is how to accelerate our positioning as a trust advisor to improve collaborative partnership and overall trust to progress in nutritional technology, farm management, biosecurity, etc. This is something that is extremely important and needs a lot of focus from our side. The second point, on the customer side, so talking about the producers themselves in the ruminant area, through the level of professionalization, and one word came to my mind right now, data. I mean, measurement, shifting from the cost control to added value, from emotional decision to rational and holistic view, including new environmental dimension to take the right decisions. So we are already formulating diets, measuring and optimizing, for example, carbon footprint for our customers. The prototype is about to be expanded in the next coming month on the field. And we need to sensitize the whole food chain to this added value available to for the finished product sold to the final consumers. There is a need to make some shift from deciding only with cost control to added value and product positioning for the whole food chain in that sense. So concluding on this question from my side, the answer is a strong yes, we can. Geography creates important differences on the size of the opportunity. Europe has already made many advanced examples illustrating that path, and we are really energized by this purpose.
I think you raised some really good points there, particularly data, but also the geography aspect. You're absolutely right that different regions of the world are dealing with this very differently. They have different challenges associated, and we have to address all of those and consider all of those when we're thinking about how to tackle some of these problems as a whole. I want to get your thoughts on this now, Phil Cardoso. You are an academic who specializes in this area at the University of Illinois. So what can you add to this? What are your thoughts on this subject?
Thank you, first of all, for inviting me to this panel. I think it's an important topic, and I think the first step is to what we're doing is to talk and generate awareness. And I think that the solution may not come today, but for sure, a first step towards that direction of changing the way we do things, and that's the only we joke with our students that the only constant in biology is the change and the variation. That's gonna keep changing, and we need to adapt to that. But coming from that perspective, I think one thing is that the consumer of the products, people drinking milk and consuming cheese, I think they're more aware of wanting to have a product that really has some positive or at least balanced environmental impact in the world, right? We don't want to be consuming products that impact negatively the environment or the world. So I think that needs to be translated to the field. And I think then when we do that, there are some challenges that we need to address. So for example, we were talking about nitrogen and nitrogen excretion through this livestock enterprises. In this case, that I work with dairy cattle or dairy farms. You're gonna see that nitrogen in excess, it has some impact on the soil, and cows are not excreting necessarily ammonia, but as soon as that nitrogen is excreted in urine or feces, that gets transformed through bacteria to ammonia, right? So there is data from all over the world that anywhere between 20 to 40 kilos of ammonia is excreted every year per cow, right? So you can see there's a big variation that, and that can change, for example, on the type of management system that each farm or each region in the world, like you guys brought up before, has that difference. So, and I think one of the ways to impact that nitrogen excretion will be through diet. So whatever that cow is eating is going to represent that excretion to be higher or lower. Like we talk about nitrogen efficiency through the cow, that means how much we feed and how much is excreted, and how can we be as effective in that process. Remember, we try to joke as well that we don't feed the cow, we feed the rumen. So we should take benefits from all that microflora that it's going to be digesting the feed and then transforming that or passing that to the cow. And if we can be effective there, we can reduce nitrogen. But so why don't we do that before? Well, if I may have slide 2, nitrogen, slide 2 up. When I have nitrogen, usually we're going to talk about crude protein. So crude protein, it's something that has been around for a long time and is nothing else than measuring the amount of nitrogen in a feed, multiplying by 6.25. That's it. That's all the information that I know from that feed. So you can see that information there. And whenever I reduce the amount of crude protein on the diet of those cows, I will increase my efficiency. So cows are going to excrete less. They're going to be more efficient with the nitrogen. However, I'm putting there some signs with money. Usually farmers have lower income because milk goes down, right? So usually diets of dairy cows, they're going to be around 17, 18% crude protein. And what we want to propose here in a little bit is, can we change that? Can we reduce that amount of nitrogen that we are feeding the cow so we can improve the efficiency? And you can see crude protein is not showing what's the difference in that feed for degradable protein. That means the one the rumen is going to really have to work it to get the nitrogen, or ruminant degradable protein, or RUP, that is going to bypass the rumen, and then the cow can use that efficiently or directly, right? So for instance, we were talking about worldwide and geographical differences. In the US, we can feed cows with blood meal. So blood meal, it's a known source of ruminant degradable protein. It's a very good source of that bypass protein. Now, that reduces the amount of degradable protein. And you can see that when I reduce degradable protein, I reduce nitrogen excretion and I increase that nitrogen efficiency in cows, right? So targeting the diet of the cow, increasing the amount of RUP in that diet, you have the cows in the system reducing the excretion of nitrogen. So you can see that identifying or qualifying the protein that is being fed, and geographically is going to be different. In Europe, South America, it's not allowed to feed blood meal, for example. So then you're going to have less sources of RUP available to feed cows. And I think that's the challenge, that now with technology and new products, we've been able to allow farmers to reduce the amount of crude protein and still get that same amount of production, if not more.
Thank you for that technical insight there. I mean, when you were speaking, one thing that really came to my mind is how responsible for a lot of these environmental issues we in the animal nutrition and feed industry are. When you think about the biggest challenges associated, environmental challenges anyway, associated with this issue, my key takeaway really is a lot of these things could be addressed if we can support in a more effective way from the animal nutrition and feed industry. So it's a real opportunity for members of the sector to come together and try to identify some ways to address these. So thank you for that interesting technical overview there, Phil. Finally, I'm going to come over to Diego Martinez de Olmo. Being from Kemin, what are your thoughts on this subject from an animal nutrition perspective?
Thank you very much for the introduction, Oli, and to the organization for the opportunity to talk about this equally exciting and controversial topic. It is also a pleasure to share this experience with Phil and Jean-François. When we talk about approaching the term sustainability with today environmental challenge and animal welfare, the first question that comes to our mind is indeed if it is possible to combine a healthier planet and improved animal welfare without losing productivity. I think the answer is yes, but how can we do it? Before we get into the subject, we must not forget that in the coming years, we will need to increase the rate of food production to meet the needs of a growing population. And for that, ruminant production is key with its role of converting vegetable and non-protein nitrogen into animal protein, milk and meat. This is how ruminants can produce food of animal origin without competition for feed with non-ruminants and humans. Therefore, it is a priority that the strategies to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide in livestock production doesn't mean a loss of productivity or animal welfare that could compromise, on the one hand, farm profitability, and on the other hand, our commitment to food production for the world's population. The Food and Agriculture Organization tell us that livestock is implicated in a large proportion of human-induced greenhouse gas emissions, and that cattle are one of the largest contributors, with methane from feed digester being a major source. Besides that, livestock production has an impact on the land for feed production, nitrogen and phosphorus excretion, and fresh water consumed. So the next question should be, are there any ways to provide protein to feed the increasing world population while also decreasing the environmental impact of agriculture production? The carbon footprint of feed can be reduced in many ways. And we can mention, for instance, replacing certain feed raw materials or using specific additives. But sometimes we forget a fundamental point, that is the low observed efficiency of conversion between nitrogen consumed and nitrogen deposited into animal protein, as Phil has just explained. This nitrogen efficiency in ruminant nutrition in most practical situations is below 30%, although the maximum theoretical efficiency should be around 40%. This goal can be reached by formulating for load curve protein, meeting metabolizable protein animal requirements, and balancing for amino acids, covering the needs of methane and lysine with the use of rumen-protected amino acids. Here you can see two diets to cover the same animal needs. On the left, one with 5% more metabolizable protein than my animal needs, not very bad formulated, it's just an example. And on the right, another one that exactly meets 100% the metabolizable protein requirements. Both are formulated for the same level of milk production and dry matter intake, but the diet that exactly meets metabolizable protein needs is formulated with a rumen-protected methionine supplement, Kemin, and a rumen-protected lysine supplement, Lysine, both from Kemin. To measure global warming potential, we have the life cycle impact assessment tool that evaluates the potential environmental impact of a product or activity through its life cycle. In this graph, you can see the theoretical greenhouse gas emissions of both diets. In orange, the one that covers the needs with the use of rumen-protected amino acids, and in blue, the one that provides 5% more than the metabolizable protein needs without the use of rumen-protected amino acids, resulting the diet that covers exactly the metabolizable protein needs with the use of rumen-protected amino acids in an improvement in the nitrogen efficiency, a reduction in the amount of CO2 equivalent excreted, and all this as we are making better use of the feed resources with a better cost per animal and per day, contributing to an improvement in the economic sustainability of the sector. And how can we improve the animal welfare now that many companies are talking about it and even certifying it? So, of course, with a proper housing management, disease prevention. But the most important thing is with a good nutrition. There are several ways to measure animal welfare in dairy ruminants, but one that sums it all up is the animal longevity. The current average number of lactation per animal on a typical farm is far from what we would like to achieve, around 3 or even higher, where animal efficiency is maximized. To achieve this, we must increase nitrogen efficiency, which will improve animal health and reproduction. Therefore, we will have fewer and productive animals. Now that we see how many countries are starting to restrict nitrogen supplementation or even imposing animal welfare taxes, our point is that we can balance between animal productivity, welfare, and environment with two straightforward strategies. By reducing the excretion of certain ingredients like nitrogen or phosphorus and improving the feed efficiency, while at the same time the nutrient utilization efficiency increases. With a very low inclusion of rumen-protected amino acids, 0.14% in my previous example, which means a very low contribution of CO2 equivalent, less than 1% of the total supply, we can not only improve animal health and income over feed cost, but also reduce nitrogen excretion through a better protein efficiency, reduce the phosphorus excretion by having less dependence on certain phosphorus-rich raw materials, reduce the methane excretion per kilogram produced by a better transformation of ingested feed, and finally, a lower CO2 equivalent excretion due to a higher milk production per kilogram of dry matter intake and more sustainable formulation, as we have just seen. In mid-range crude protein diets are not possible, or at least very difficult and costly, to meet methionine or lysine needs with the use of the dairy feed ingredients. Therefore, the use of rumen-protected amino acid is needed. It is remarkable that methionine and lysine work in concert. Both are necessary in our diets for the best precise feeding to achieve the maximum production performance without overfeeding protein. Balancing diets for amino acids rather than crude protein is the state-of-the-art approach when it comes to ruminant nutrition. With this approach, we will be able to take advantage of the progress that science gives us in terms of precision feeding, as Phil has just explained, in order to meet the needs of the ruminant sector in a sustainable and profitable manner, as Jean-François has outlined in his presentation.
Thank you, Diego. So it's great to hear from you that there are some solutions here that can be implemented to actively improve some of these challenges. And it's great to hear you mention animal welfare as an issue as well, because I referred to it earlier, and it's something that I can only see getting a lot more focus and attention over the coming years. So it's good to understand how it is linked and that there are ways to address this through feeding. I have a few follow-up questions. Jean-François, I'm going to come to you first. I want to know more about your opinion on the fact that ruminant production in particular faces a lot of scrutiny compared to the rest of animal agriculture and even other industries when it comes to sustainability. So from what you've heard today and from your experience in animal agriculture, how fair do you think this is?
Yes, in some points, not in others. So feed conversion rate is higher in beef than any other animal protein production. Ruminants are known to produce more methane than others animal in some extent, but still biogenic carbon cycle related, which is even a topic at itself. At the same time, milk has a very low conversion index, and its carbon footprint is unknown by many compared to other animal protein sources. So I understand the rising questions. At the same time, we acknowledge the lack of data rather than opinions, and then coming back to the science-based, interpretation of the situation, Holly.
No, I completely agree. I think I have heard so many different figures about the contribution of ruminants to greenhouse gas emissions over the years that it's very confusing. And I think a lot of, as you say, it's the way you interpret the data and it's the way you're collecting that data. So I think there's more digging to be done here, but certainly you're right, it's an issue that we need to focus on, but it's certainly up to interpretation a bit there. I've got a couple of other questions. Diego, I'll come to you now. For a ruminant producer who's looking to invest in maybe just one strategy or product to make their farming more sustainable, what do you think they should prioritize? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, well, in my opinion, thank you very much for the question, Oli. So I think that we should prioritize those strategies that are sustainable over time, if I may be redundant. And for this, nothing better than increasing milk or meat production per kilogram of dry matter ingested. But if we have to choose only one, I believe that improving the efficiency of nitrogen consumed in nitrogen from milk or meat via amino acid formulation is an action with which will contribute to reduce the carbon footprint of that kilogram of milk or meat produced and to improve the income of the farmer and the industry.
Thank you, Diego. Phil, I want to get your thoughts on this as well. Do you agree? What do you think ruminant producers should be prioritizing?
I do agree with it, and I think that efficiency comes from a ratio of what the cow is eating and what the cow is excreting. And I see a lot of difficulty in the field in measure what the cow is eating. However, what the cow is excreting, the milk yield, the amount of fat, the amount of protein, the amount of nitrogen in that milk, the milk urea nitrogen, that's very common, and co-ops and companies that collect the milk provide that to the farmer every day sometimes, if not every week or every month, right, for that tank, or we can get information from individual cows. So I think it goes back to establishing a way for that farmer to really get a handle on what my cows are eating and understand what is the quality of that diet. And that means what is the nitrogen so that you have there. Because probably farmers, they're gonna have in more or less spectrum a way of changing that and improving that. So that's what I think is, sometimes it comes back on, can we have an assessment of what your cows are eating, because we need that to make sure you are being efficient. That means the rumen is being efficient in converting that nitrogen into something that we can use as protein, for example, milk protein, for example. So I think it comes from identify really clearly what is that nitrogen coming in. Usually it comes back to the quality of the protein. So crude protein is not enough, like we've been talking here. We need to know a little bit more, because we know that certain amino acids, like Diego was talking about, methionine and lysine, those are part of the protein, right? So if I don't have those, the cow is not going to make any milk protein. Doesn't matter if she has all the other ones. And we know that they need that since 2001, right? At least here in the US, in the NRC, and that reflects in the whole world as well. But I think now we are being able to kind of act on it, because just giving the amino acids like we do with swine or poultry that doesn't work for ruminants, right? We need to bypass the ruminants. So the technology involved there, I think that's what it's allowing us to act a little bit more precise or efficiently on that matter. But it's going to come back to efficiency, what's coming in, what's coming out, and let's have farmers having the ability to do that.
Thank you for that, Phil. And if for those producers who are wondering, you know, what they should be investing in, you've got your tips now from Diego and Phil. You can go ahead and implement those things. So thank you all for your input into this section. It's been really fascinating to get your thoughts on what we know is really a growing challenge for our industry. So I want to move on to our second topic, which is very heavily linked to actually what we've been discussing. Our second topic is, can we combine a healthier planet with a healthier business? Is it possible to achieve a better world while maintaining business objectives? So we all know, we're all involved in businesses, and we all know that we need to make sure our production costs do not exceed the price of what we deliver. For ruminant producers, this creates a difficult situation. As we discussed, we would all like to produce more sustainable beef and dairy products that meet higher welfare standards, but of course, these come with a cost. And you cannot always pass the financial implications of these additional costs on to consumers. So is there a way that we can produce animal protein that is sustainable while keeping the costs down? I'm very interested to hear what our speakers have to say on this issue, but before we hear from them, we do have our second poll, which you can find in the poll tab. Which of these productivity issues listed do you think are currently the biggest challenges to address in ruminant production? So do give us your thoughts on that question now. So I want to get stuck into this topic, and this time I want to go to Phil Cardoso first. Can you give us your thoughts on this subject?
Sure, and I think that's something that more and more society is requiring everybody to be responsible in the way they produce, not just animal protein, but any business in the world now. It's being, I'm not going to say scrutinized, but at least we need to address how you're dealing with the environment and the society in general, right? So I do think that, I mean, the farmers, if we ask dairy farmers, and I've done that all over the world, not just in the US, but in Europe, in South America, and if I ask them, your cow just calved, so she just had a baby, what do you want from that cow, right? So what would you expect from that cow? And any place I go, I always have the same answer. They want a cow that has no disorders, so they want a healthy cow, right? They want cows that produce a lot of milk, and they also want those cows to get pregnant again. Okay, so that's one thing that I think aligns very well with society, what they would expect from a dairy farmer, right? Hey, they want the cows to be healthy. They want the cows to produce, because in our idea, and maybe that's what we need to clarify a little bit, is that milk is the absence of stress, right? When we talk about welfare, cows that are stressed, they don't produce a lot of milk, right? So we are doing something right that she allows that for that production. I'm not saying that milk yield or production should be the measurement or the status of welfare. I think there are other parameters that should be involved if we talk about that. But farmers, they know exactly what they want. And then from the research perspective, from academia, we develop trials and research projects that can address that or can lead them to that, always thinking about the other constraints of profitability, the economic impact, but also the society impact of excretion, for example, right? And we do have some research on amino acids. So I think that one of the ways that nitrogen excretion or nitrogen efficiency is going to go up, it's going to be by utilizing rumen protected amino acids. 20, 30 years from now, we didn't have that as available as we have now, right? So maybe that's one of the reasons why we were not doing it 30 years ago, even though maybe 20 years ago we knew we needed to have those amino acids, right? So it's playing with that, and we showed, as we can see in the graph on the right, if I feed for amino acids, the cows, they're going to produce more solids, so more protein and more fat. And I show graphs there in the bottom right. They're pretty much showing how much muscle that cow is mobilizing. I can reduce that amount of muscle she's mobilizing to get the amino acids. And also the amount of, we call acute phase proteins like haptoglobin that is involved in inflammatory process. If the cows receive those amino acids, she can reduce the amount of that acute phase protein, telling me that they transition or they can go through lactation a little bit with lower stress, right? Assuming inflammation is stress. And that's one of the challenges when talking to farmers, is that's what I have, that RX in the middle of the slide. It's just like we should see that diet that we're feeding cows as a prescription. If we think about ourselves, right, we can eat whatever we want. I can go to McDonald's every day, right? And I get hamburgers and fast food and all that. However, that probably is going to take me to the doctor a little bit sooner than later, right? Now, if I have a balanced diet on carbohydrates, protein, and fat, probably my visit to the doctor is going to be to a later date, right? So I challenge for us to understand, what do I need to have in that diet for the cow? The same thing as every day, we are giving a prescription, right? So instead of a prescription for drugs because you're sick, those are things that you have to be healthy. And I think, and through the research that we have done, amino acids is a way, especially in places where you cannot have sources of ruminant degradable protein like blood meal. That's one of the main strategies that are going to allow you to lower the amount of nitrogen. So crude protein is going to go down and production is going to stay the same or even increase because you are giving what the cow needs. So we understand the requirement of the cow. We understand she needs that. And now I think we have the ability and the knowledge on how to provide that for better profitability and income.
Thank you for that overview, Phil. I think those 3 productivity factors, as I'm calling them, are really important because you're right, consumers are also really interested in minimizing health disorders, and the other elements maybe not so much, but they go hand in hand. Like you said, a healthy cow produces lots of milk, so everyone wins, and a happy cow produces lots of milk, so everyone wins. So I think that some of these kind of concerns from consumers can be quite heavily linked to productivity, and I think the role that amino acids can play in them is a really interesting point and something that is really emerging throughout this discussion today. I'm going to pass over now to Jean-Francois. Can you give us your thoughts on this subject?
At the question, is it possible to achieve an inferior planet with a healthy business sector? My immediate and spontaneous answer is yes, Oli. The how is the key of the question. An inferior planet should be based on science progress, on exchange between professionals supported by authorities and media to help us in this purpose. The vast majority of the actors today are pursuing this goal. At the same time, we need to say that emotional communication, opinion without data or knowledge, are today invading our space, asking paradoxical actions counterproductive, even if we are all looking for the same objective. And I would like to offer 2 examples of polarities we need to manage. Just a quick one on carbon footprint. Equivalence between methane and carbon dioxide, which is the metric measuring gas emission, is biased, as the methane produced by ruminant is biogenic carbon cycle related, and the carbon dioxide coming from fossil energy is not. Therefore, measurement of gas emission can be misled with no correct understanding. And second example, on existing sustainable food chain, we can hear from public authorities their sometimes reluctance to continue to produce animal protein, arguing for sustainability, where they are probably on the best position on that topic compared with other geographies, countries. That make me think in the Netherlands, for example, where they are extremely advanced, and at the same time, they seem to encourage to stop producing animal protein and may shift to import from other countries where it is not. So we are operating in markets where, fortunately, we have regulations, and these regulations need to be built on awareness, on data, on science, on rationale, not on emotions, opinions, and so on. We believe as well that our culture, our culture in our companies, should be explicit in that domain. What is our purpose? We need oxygen to live, but we don't live to breathe. Our purpose is clear for us. Create sustainable nutritional solution for our customers is the goal. Innovation, capabilities improvement, product portfolio management are following that strategy and reflect this culture. And we need to ensure that this business model makes profit to be sustainable. We want to continue to invest, to attract talents, to modernize our organization, our sector. I would say the healthier we will be, better will be our planet, as our talent for tomorrow are choosing us, not us choosing them. We need to be clear, engaged, and driven by purpose. Oli.
Thank you for that overview. I think you're absolutely right. Cultures across our industry are changing. I think, when I joined the industry years ago, people weren't talking about sustainability in the way that they are now. And I think, although our part of the industry, I think in animal nutrition and feed, we've had it on our radar for a while. I think that some ruminants producers were aware of it, wanted to implement it, but the need wasn't necessarily there in the same way that it is now. Now there is a bit more of a demand from consumers, from retailers, restaurant chains. So I think it is something that, as you say, we're having to implement. The way that we're approaching our businesses are changing. So it's a really interesting point you made there. Finally, I'll come over to you, Diego. Can you give us your thoughts on this subject and how you think we can make sure that we can be sustainable while also ensuring productivity remains strong?
Yes, sure. So in addition and reinforcement of what Jean-Francois and Phil have just explained, to achieve success in all the measures we can propose in terms of sustainability, we must find the balance between environmental and economic sustainability. For this purpose, it is essential to work on the concept of precision feeding to improve feed efficiency. And of course, very important, we don't have to forget the milk or meat quality, the marketability of our product. To modify animal methane or ammonia and nitrous oxide emission from manure storage and even decrease nutrients in manure, we have different possibilities. The actions to reduce methane include strategies that increase nutrient digestibility. Also, by supplementing some additives in animal feed, we could reduce nitrogen, phosphorus, or even methane excretion. Moreover, other types of feed additives may have an influence on feed efficiency, whether by reducing feed consumption or increasing animal health. But the critical point should be if we can achieve all those effects at the same time. On the one hand, reducing the emission, and on the other hand, increasing nutritional efficiency and therefore the feed conversion rate. Manure from livestock production can contribute up to 50% of the global nitrous oxide from agriculture, according to different studies. And speaking specifically of ruminants, as we discussed in the first block, nitrogen efficiency is particularly low. So modification of the chemical characteristics of manure through reduction of phosphorus and nitrogen excretion could represent an effective way to reduce the risk of leaching and eutrophication. But in addition, we can reduce methane excretion by reducing the number of non-productive animals, improving animal health, fertility, and therefore animal longevity. In this graph, you can see the numbers of studies in the last 50 years that demonstrated the effect of methionine, lysine, and lysine on, first, better liver function and better transition period, which can be translated into better health or less metabolic problems. Second, we can also see a significant number of studies that relate the use of amino acids with a better reproduction or better gene expression in replacement heifers, which means longer longevity. And third, we should not forget that milk production and milk composition can be improved. It is very important to highlight here that we will also increase milk casein and therefore the effect on cheese yield and cheese efficiency in the dairy industry, which would increase product marketability while reducing waste by the dairy industry. This is how, with the use of rumen-protected amino acids satisfying the animal's methionine and lysine needs, we can balance better animal welfare and health with less excretion to the environment, and all this without affecting or even improving the profitability of the ruminant sector, not only for farms of the feed industry, but also for the dairy companies. The environmental impact of feedstuffs are mainly influenced by the environmental impact of the ingredients per kilogram. Normally, feed formulation aims to reduce cost for a given nutritional value without considering the environmental impact of the incorporated ingredient. But can we talk about feed formulation based on environmental criteria? We believe that the only way to achieve this objective of a more responsible formulation in a viable way is if this doesn't harm the final profitability of the end user of my feed, which is ruminant farming, as you can imagine. According to Food and Agriculture Organization, in developed countries, the greenhouse gas reduction becomes attractive to farmers only when it's combined with animal and farm productivity. With this, I can promote substitution between feed ingredients, seeking not only to achieve a reduction in the CO2 equivalence of my diet, but also to achieve better efficiency. And going back to the diet example I showed you in the first block, you will see how the most profitable way to cover the needs of methionine and lysine is with the use of rumen-protected amino acids. In this table, you can see the diet that we explained earlier that satisfy 100% of the metabolizable protein needs and the different amount of metabolizable methionine and lysine that comes from the different ingredients, which is about 40% of the total metabolizable protein supply. The rest, as you know, comes from the microbial protein. I only would like to highlight here that more than 32% of the total metabolizable methionine comes from the use of the rumen-protected methionine, Kemin in this case, and more than 16% of the total metabolizable lysine comes from the addition of the rumen-protected lysine, which means the greatest contribution in both cases. So, the rumen-protected amino acids contribute the most of the metabolizable methionine or lysine in a typical diet, and not only this, is the cheapest way to cover those requirements. In the two figures on the right, you can see the cost per gram of metabolizable methionine or lysine. I have to say that these diets were formulated with the average prices of 2020 last year. And the conclusion that is repeated in each one of the diets that we see daily is that the cheapest way to supplement methionine or lysine is by far with the use of rumen-protected amino acids. In conclusion, according to recent studies, and as it was explained today, producing a liter of milk nowadays requires less water, less land, and produce half the carbon footprint than producing it 60 years ago, but we still have room for improvement. And on the other hand, the feed cost could represent up to 70% of the total cost of production. Therefore, with amino acid formulation, we will be able to improve nitrogen, phosphorus, and feed efficiency with one of the biggest impacts on the farm profitability, while being a key tool to reduce the carbon footprint impact on each liter of milk or kilogram of meat produced. While achieving this, we also believe that the use of rumen-protected amino acids is a key tool in improving the efficiency of dairy and feed industries.
Thank you for that overview, Diego. Some really interesting points there about the animal nutrition solutions available. I do have a follow-up question for you. Can you tell us tell us a bit more about why feed efficiency is so important when considering both sustainability and value for money?
Well, I think that if we were able to produce more milk or meat with the same amount of feed, we will be making better use of the resources, contributing to reducing global warming or reducing the life cycle impact assessment of the ruminant farming, as well as meeting the growing demand for food for the population. And taking into account that the cost of the feed is the most important investment in the livestock operating account, we will also contribute to a greater economic relief of the sector. So we think that is one of the better actions that we can put in place.
Thank you for that. And my follow-up question is actually quite heavily linked to that. We know feed costs are, quite an investment when you're raising an animal. Jean-Francois, a lot of feed producers and ruminant producers out there are having to make cost-effective decisions. So how can they make sure their animal nutrition products are worth the investment?
Professionalization, Oli, from both sides. Transparency, modeling, measurement on expected results, data, always data. We come back on that. And then quality from our side, from our customer-facing team to diagnostic, calibrate, and articulate the value proposition, because we need to sell the story as well with the content and enabling our customers to engage in that itinerary. Short answer, but I hope it's clear.
Very clear, very clear. Data. Make sure you do your research, make sure you really investigate.
And customer-facing capabilities, Oli. Customer-facing capabilities.
That's a good point as well. Phil, what can you add to this? How can we make sure that animal nutrition products are worth their investment?
I can't agree more on the strategy of having a data-driven farm. So that means every decision at the farm is made out of data generated by the farmer. I think we have computers, we have a lot of data now that can be done in different, degrees. But I do think that first, I think farmers, they're gonna partner with companies that are not there to sell a product, but sell a solution. And that should encompass nitrogen excretion, green gas houses. They should be aware and helping the farmer to comply with all those things. And I think all is going to come back to a dairy efficiency, right? And there are different ways that we can talk about it. We talk about feed conversion. Here, we try to account for the solids in the milk. So we usually talk about dairy efficiency that takes in account the protein in the fat over the intake. And we account also for how much solids the cow is producing per day, for example, right? How many pounds of protein, how many pounds of fat, because usually that's how farmers get paid. And we can have strategies on identifying using this product, not using it, and what's going to be the difference. And that's going to tell the cows at the farm, they're going to tell the farmer if that's worth doing it or not. But again, companies should help you to get there.
There we go. Some really practical tips there about what you should be doing to make sure that you're investing in the right way and put the attention on the animal nutrition providers. Get them to do the work for you. So that's some really good advice there. Thank you for your insight here. And it's a really nice point to end on. So I think it's clear from what we've heard today that these are big issues that we have to face, but there is hope. There are clearly options that businesses can take to start making their businesses more sustainable environmentally and also financially. Our speakers are still online, so do keep putting your questions to them if you want to get their thoughts on additional areas. But I would like to take this opportunity to thank them all for such a great session. You all brought such great knowledge and insight into what we've discussed today, and I've really enjoyed the discussion. So thank you all for taking the time. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in and contributed to the session today. We hope you found it interesting and that you tune in to future sessions from Feedinfo.